Episode 44 of the Photime Podcast. This time we're going to talk about all things traveling with your ham radio gear. Also some tips if you live in an apartment. And of course the giveaway announcements coming up.
MTCRadio.com presents Photime, the other ham radio podcast. Found online at PhotimePodcast.com. Now, here's your host, Cale Nelson, K4CDN.
Yeah, welcome into episode number 44 of the Photime Podcast. Please excuse the voice. It's been quite a rough time to get this thing to even work this time through, but we appreciate you being here. My name's Cale. My call is Kilo for Charlie, Delta November. Suffering through the wintertime grunge, whatever you want to call it, and it's been wintertime here in the upstate of South Carolina, as has it been up through the most part of the eastern seaboard. So we appreciate you tuning in this time through. This is the Photime Podcast. It's the podcast for you, the new guy, the folks who've been around a while. Either way, if you're enjoying the amateur radio hobby, looking to enhance your experience in the hobby, that's exactly what this podcast has been created for, and we appreciate you tuning in. You can find us online at PhotimePodcast.com. That's F-O-T-I-M-E podcast.com. Find all the show notes, show sponsors, and etc. there on the site. From day one, we've been sponsored by our friends at Main Trading Company, Richard and Christine Lenore, along with Danielle and Tammy, doing a fine job down there in Paris, Texas. And if you're interested and looking for some ICOM gear, make sure you check out their website, mtcradio.com. You need ICOM gear, whether it's a handy-talkie, full-blown HF rig, or something in the middle. Maybe you just need an accessory. Call them, log into their website, and let them know you heard about them here on the Photime Podcast. It's mtcradio.com for all of your ICOM needs. Check them out today. Yeah, we are here today with John Pugliano, and I believe I just said it right. John, welcome to the Photime Podcast. Your call, John, is November 7 Papa Uniform Golf. And tell us a little bit about yourself and your amateur radio hobby.
Hey, Cale, thanks for having me on the podcast. Yeah, I've been a ham for probably a little more than 5 years now, close to 6 years. And I'm in my 50s, so it took me a while to get to the hobby. Like many people, and like you, when I was younger, I had walkie-talkies, handy-talkies, CB radio kind of things. I was a kid back in the 70s when all that craze was going on. And I just really was always fascinated with radio, the whole concept of radio, and trying to build little Heath kit projects and learning how to solder. But I never knew anybody that was a ham. Well, I guess I did. Actually, I'm thinking about this in my whole, probably till I was in my 20s. I actually only remember meeting one ham, and it was a teacher at my junior high. One time I remember he had a radio in his car, and he was showing us how he could link up to repeaters. And this is back in the probably early 70s. So that was the closest I'd ever come to it. I'd seen people with big antennas on their houses and figured they were ham radio operators, but didn't know anybody, didn't know how to get in the hobby or to get an Elmer, or, in those days you had to learn code, and you could only take your test when the FCC came around. You had to, go to a big city where they had the testing, and maybe once a month or once every quarter, someone from the FCC would come in to test. And so I just never got around to it. It's something I always wanted to do. I went in the military out of high school and originally thought I was going to be a radio operator in the Marine Corps. That's the way I thought it was going to work out. But the Marine Corps kind of picks and chooses what you do. And I ended up being in aviation, which worked out okay too. I was in the hydraulics mechanic in aviation, so that worked out. But I was really, I have always been interested in radio. Anyways, it took me till, I was 49 years old, though, before I finally found out that you didn't have to have code anymore. And that was my first introduction, to getting into it. And then, of course, things like your podcast and the internet and YouTube and all the things that we didn't used to have, which people, it's funny, they think that ham radio is obsolete, and the internet's only made it better because it's showed all of us how to get into the hobby and all the interesting things we can do in the hobby.
Absolutely. It continues to grow, and it does not surprise me. There's so many different facets of folks from so many different walks of life, and folks who have such differing reasons for coming into the hobby, but we welcome them all. And again, we welcome you to the podcast. Now, guys, you may not know this, but John is also a podcaster, So before we get talking about the topic here, John, give us a little taste of what you podcast about, and you go ahead and drop your URL in there if folks are interested in listening. It's a great show. I've listened a couple of times, really enjoy it. I'm into that kind of thing, although I don't have anything to do any of it with. I enjoy listening to someone with the experience talk about it. So let us know what you're podcasting about, John.
Sure. Thanks for bringing that up. So my podcast is called the Wealthsteading Podcast. Wealthsteading is in homesteading. It's about wealthsteading, building your wealth. I have my own investment firm. I'm an independent investment advisor. And this actually leads into the hobby, too, because part of the reason I would have never thought I would do a podcast, but when I decided to go down that road, because I was a ham radio operator and I was used to using microphones and computers and things like that, it made it so much easier to start my own podcast, and that's no different from many people that I've met in ham radio that they're electrical engineers or broadcast engineers or whatever. Because of their interest in ham radio, it led them into a fulfilling career. So anyways, I podcast about market conditions, stock market commentary. A lot of it's a trading journal. Whenever I'm trading, I tell people what I'm doing. I give basic tips for how to invest money, and a little less on the investment side, just more on general wealth building principles. It's been a fun thing. Been doing it for a year and a half now, I guess.
Fantastic. Well, it's a great show. I enjoy it, and there's new podcasters every day on every topic, and of course that's a whole other show we could do right there. But it's always interesting and fun to see folks from our end of the hobby get in. Curtis, one of our listeners from Texas, just has recently started his new podcast, Everything Ham Radio, and we'll link to that as well. But John, we wanted to get together today to talk about kind of, I guess, your past life, for lack of a better term, or where you still find yourself sometimes when you're out away from home traveling and integrating the hobby into your travels. So tell us a little bit about how you handle that type of situation.
Yeah, and I'll kind of frame this too in terms of why I think this is a good topic for your podcast. Is I hear people all the time talking about they're doing summits on the air, or they're going to activate some lighthouse or some state park, or they're going backpacking and all these things that they're doing on Saturday afternoon or Sunday morning or something. And I rarely find people that tell me that they're taking their ham radio on a business trip with them, kind of like activating their business trip. And I'm like, well, right. We should do that because many of us are traveling through the week at least one day a week, or find yourself far from home more often than not. And if this is a great time to take your hobby with you because if you're like me, and Cal, I know you're like me. I got 6 kids. I think you have what, 4 or 5?
I've got 5. Yeah,
five kids. And oh, by the way, I only have one left at home. Only one is in high school. The rest of them are all grown. So it does get better. There's light at the end of the tunnel. But when you're at home, you got kids around and family obligations, and just it's hard to work in ham radio sometimes. When you're out on the road, I found myself I generally don't frequent the bars and the pool halls. So in the evenings, I might not have anything to do when I'm out of town after I accomplish whatever I'm doing at work. And so in the evening is a great time to bring your hobby with you and do some QRP or backpacking with your ham radio, whatever you want to do. It's a great thing to bring on a business trip.
And it's a lot better than expensive beer and stale peanuts.
Absolutely. Keeps you out of a lot of trouble.
Yeah. I've been there years ago and did some traveling, and that was what got old the most, was the hotel bar when you were stuck there. Now, not everybody that travels has to go and stay in a hotel all the time. I mean, they can get out and move around. They may have a rental car. They may be out in a suburban type area instead of a real heavy urban environment. Talk to us a little bit about what we can expect if we're going to be traveling with our gear, whether it's through the TSA or we're just renting a car and driving. What have been some of the experiences that you've had?
Yeah, and that logistics really, vary depending upon how you're going to do it. If you're going to fly, there are some TSA concerns. I have not had any. I heard a lot of horror stories, and I actually didn't I can't remember ever having any problems of bringing my equipment along with me. Generally, the rule is, and this is my understanding of it, and things could have changed, I'm not sure, but I think you can generally have a tool with you that's no longer than 7 inches, as long as it's not sharp. So you can't have razor blades, knives, everybody knows that. But, you can still bring general tool type things that you might need for ham radio, as well as the wire and the different things. So, over the years, I've brought some crazy things just in my carry-on bags that no one's, I guess they questioned it, but the great part about ham radio is, it's kind of the original social media, and even people that have never done it, they know about it. And so when you say, oh, that's, that, yeah, I know that looks like a 18-inch billy club, but it's actually my telescopic antenna for my ham radio. And they look at you like, what are you talking about? You take this thing and pull it out, it's 16 feet long. I've been able to get that on an airplane from time to time. So, you're obviously best off putting anything that you may think that TSA is going to take away from you in bags that you check. I always carry my radios. Obviously, I don't ever check those. I have a Yaesu 857 that's a mobile rig, and then also the Yaesu 817, which is their little portable version that has its own. It's basically the same thing as the 857, but lower wattage. It's QRP. It only goes up to about 5 watts, and it has a self-contained battery. So, I would throw those in my carry-on bag, and then anything else I thought I could get away with, from duct tape to wire to small antenna tuners, all those kind of things. I've been able to get through TSA. So, as long as you watch out for anything over 7 inches, and you can usually slide with that. And not, as long as it's not sharp, I haven't had any problems. And then, the big question too is, are you getting a rental car on the other end? That comes to deal with power. That's the big thing. And the reason I switch between those two radios, if I was going to have a rental car, I'd usually bring my 857 because I could use I wouldn't use it as a mobile operation, but I could use the battery in the rental car to for portable power operation. If I wasn't going to have a rental car, I'd bring the 817.
I got you. So you don't have special Pelican type cases. You're packing them in your carry-ons when you go to protect them there and to make sure that folks that like me that used to work in the belly of the jet don't toss them around for you while you're packing.
Yeah. So anything I'm putting in the belly of the jet in actual check baggage is something I don't care if it gets broken about. So a telescopic antenna or something that's pretty durable. But if it's my radio, I'm hand carrying that in my backpack or briefcase or whatever I have. When I first did it, I was a little paranoid. I'd wrap things up, and I did have a Pelican case, or I put things in foam. As I started doing it over the years, I found out this equipment's really durable, and I just throw it in there next to my laptop. Those radios are small, plenty of room, and I just hand carry the radio right on the plane.
Do you go to the gate with your etched name tag so folks know that you're an amateur operator, or maybe a ball hat, like a trucker hat with your call or anything on it?
Yeah, I wear the T-shirts from the last ham. What's it called? A ham. The
Hamvention in Dayton.
Hamvention, yeah. Wear my Dayton Hamvention T-shirt. Yeah. Now, I just go like a regular guy, and you go through TSA and they find this big spool of wire in your bag or something like that, or why you have duct tape or electrical tape. And again, you pull out the radio. They usually, sir, will you step aside? Yeah. You walk over with them. They take your stuff out. They wipe it down to make sure there's no explosives, and then you explain to them, hey, I'm a ham radio operator, blah blah. And people are really friendly. Even with as we start talking about operating near a hotel or wherever you're on business, you're going to run into security guards, police officers, because they're going to wonder, like, why is this guy in the middle of the parking lot at night, with this wire, or why is he on the roof of the hotel? I mean, why, obviously places you can get access to, but why is this guy here with this little equipment? And you meet the nicest people. I always kind of joke about it and say, even if you don't make a QSO on the radio, you're bound to meet a very nice security guard or police officer. Yeah. And generally, again, many of them are ham radio operators, but a lot of them are just like like we used to be. Hey, I always wanted to be a ham radio operator. How do you get into the hobby?
That's cool. That's cool. Hey, we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. We're with John Pugliano, November 7 PUG, and we're talking about traveling with ham radio right here on the Photime podcast. Okay, going to start with the giveaways here real quick. George is first because G comes before J. Jeremy will be up with us here in a few minutes. George provides these kits from his company, Sierra Radio Systems. Thank you so much, George, not only for just giving into the Photime podcast and the audience, but giving these on behalf of your company and yourself. We appreciate it. First off, David Gruder, Kilo 6 Uniform Lima X-Ray. Dave is looking for a project for him and his son together to work on, and they will be getting a PIC development board and project boards number 430 and 415 from Sierra Radio Systems and Ham Stack. Jason Stedman, Alpha Kilo Zero Whiskey, is looking to build a Kier, and he'll be getting a Hamstack development kit number 410, and that includes a complete open source Kier project written in C. Let's see. Up next, Jim Powitz, Whiskey 7 Zulu November Delta. Jim wants to build a Kier. He will get a Hamstack development kit number 410, and that includes a complete open source Kier project written in C. I've got to say, Jim, you have a really, really nice mustache there. Jason Tower is a fairly new ham, and his call is Kilo Golf 7 Zulu Mike Romeo. He wants to build a CW trainer. He will get a Hamstack number 430 development board, and there is an open source CW keyboard program written in BASIC available that works with that. Congratulations to you guys, and we'll be back with more giveaways in a bit. Thank you, George. Bridgecom Systems, not a new company, but a new name for the amateur to remember, especially if you're interested in 220 megahertz gear. Repeaters, repeater controllers, DMR, LMR, all sorts of gear, along with their 220 megahertz amateur radio gear designed specifically for you and for me, the amateur radio operator. And you can find them at bridgecomsystems.com. We are back with John, November 7 PUG, Papa Uniform Golf. And John, we've been talking about traveling with our amateur radio gear. Now, I don't do a lot of traveling at all, and that's okay. I guess I'm a homeboy. But you've traveled, and you've taken your gear with you, and you've set up and operated. We've talked a little bit about the rigs that you take along with you, but what are some other equipment along with your rigs that you like to make sure you have with you when you're headed out of town?
Sure. And one thing I'll say, too, is that up till this point, I've only done phone operation. So I'm doing single sideband. Mm-hmm. If I were doing CW, which I'm trying to learn now, I'm actually taking some classes through the CW Academy and trying to learn Morse code. Had I done that, it would be even simpler because I think you can bring a lot less equipment. But, obviously, if you're doing single sideband, you want to get as much power as you can. So that makes things a little more complicated. But, over 4 or so years of bringing my radio on the road, I tried a lot of different things. And it always comes down to the bottom line. You need the transmitter, some kind of rig. You need an antenna tuner and a wire. And you can get by with pretty much those 3 things. If you have some way to tune a wire, you're in business. So, that's the minimum you need. But over the years, I tried a lot of different things. And as far as different types of wires, and my overall philosophy on everything with ham radio is don't get too caught up in the theory on things. I see people go into forums and they'll say, well, can you do this? And then 70 people will reply back, and probably 65 of those people never tried what they're saying can't be done. Just have fun. Go out, take a wire out there with you and see if it works. And if it doesn't, you'll lose 30 minutes of time fooling around with it. But I've just taken basic wires. I ended up concentrating on the thinnest, insulated wire I could take. That way I could take long lengths of it, and it would be insulated, so I would have to worry about less, electrical contact type issues. And with a thin wire, my I'm not going to get a lot of broadband capacity out of it if it's a real thin wire, but that's okay because I'm just out there to have some fun. I'm not trying to do any contesting, just trying to see what I can hear and make some QSOs. So a real thin, small wire, and even from a structural standpoint, again, people get all wrapped up in things. I'm using this antenna for maybe 30 minutes to 2 hours some evening while I'm killing time on a business trip. The antenna doesn't have to last through a hurricane. So just whatever you can get by with, start with that, bring it along. The antenna is always the most important part, and it's the thing that's going to get compromised the most. And I found over the years you can use different things. I really, really ended up loving the little MFJ. It's called a 902B. It's their little travel antenna tuner. And it's a great little unit. It's probably only, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches wide by a couple inches deep and a couple inches tall. So again, it's something you can easily throw into your carry-on bag. You can hook an N7PUG wire to it or balance line. There's just a lot of different things you can do with it. Very, very simple and durable. Again, I've thrown mine in my bag for 4 years and taken it with me and never had any problem with it. And that thing can tune up just about anything any wire I wanted to tune up. One thing I'll step back to, the other reason I like those Yaesu radios I mentioned is they have built-in SWR meters on them. I don't think all radios do, but those two do. And the great thing about if you have in the built-in SWR meter and you have a little tuner, you can just tune up any antenna or any wire right there. You don't need any extra meters or anything. It's just very simple. You know if you're in the ballpark of you got low SWR, and if you have low noise quality, you start listening to things and you just try and make a contact. It's really that simple. So that little MFJ travel tuner I highly recommend that. Something similar, it could be used similarly to that, is there's a thing called a super antenna. I think it's an MP1, and it's like a little. Have you ever seen one of those, Cale? It's a little manual screwdriver antenna.
I'm wanting to say that I have. I think we might have even talked about one of those way back in one of the early shows, but I'm just not familiar right off the bat with that.
Well, those are really great. I mean, the when it's folded up, it comes with a little telescopic antenna that's kind of junky, but the good part about it is the coil, and it's just like a screwdriver, so you can manually set that thing. I think it covers everything from either 80 or 40 meters, up to 6 meters. So you can just manually move that coil up and down, and it extends from maybe 8 inches when it's fully closed to 15, 16 inches when it's extended. But the great thing about that is you can use it as just the antenna itself. If you're if you use that with a telescopic antenna or some kind of a whip antenna like you normally would use a screwdriver antenna, you can use it that way, or you can use that coil just as a tuner. I've taken that and hooked it up to an N7PUG wire, just a standard N7PUG wire, or even trying to construct an off-center dipole, and I've used that coil to try and tune the antenna. And again, with the SWR meter built right into my radios, it works great. It's I think that's a really efficient way to do it. And again, these are things that you're not going to win any contests with it. You're maybe not going to break through pileups. But if you're spending some Wednesday evening somewhere out of town, you do that, and you'll be surprised. On 5 watts, I've made single sideband voice contacts, pretty much throughout the U.S. and occasionally, not often, but occasionally, I've even gotten some DX outside the U.S. on 5 watts. If you are able to have a rental car, or you're driving your own car where you can bring a rig like an 857 that has 100 watts. I've talked all around the world on that radio on business trips, just operating from a rental car in a parking lot or somewhere on a simple wire, nothing fancy, and not even a wire. I've used some of these things again, that antenna tuner or the coil from the super antenna. I've used those to load up various things. I improvise while I'm along the road. I might find a a guy wire, a big old cable guy wire that's holding up some pole or something, and tap into that. And it sounds crazy, but I've made contacts off of those things. I've been on the rooftops of some hotels where they have access. Sometimes, it depends where you stay, but if you're in some place like Las Vegas, they have big swimming pools up on top of the roof of their hotels. I've operated from the roof of a Vegas hotel and talked all around the country just on 5 watts, just using a simple telescopic type antenna. There's the MFJ 1979 is the telescopic one that folds up about 16 inches. 15, 16 inches when it's all the way collapsed, but that thing will go out to 16 and a half feet. And I've used that thing before, like I say, on the rooftop of a hotel, just with 5 watts and a tuner, and you're just amazed at the contacts you can make.
Wow. That's when I'm listening to you talk, it kind of puts me in the mindset, and this could be another topic for another day. But a lot of folks who live in apartments and maybe don't have access to a patio or something, these types of things would be great gear for someone like that who's looking to operate. They may not be able to sit in their den and eat popcorn. They may have to go out in the central part of the foyer there or something. But there are options that can be used for traveling. But even in addition to traveling, these are some great tips for folks who have maybe not the 33 acres like I do, then can just go sit in the barn when they want to talk on the radio.
Yeah, that's right. A stealth antenna or whatever. I've used fishing poles. Again, telescopic type fishing poles. They have crappie poles, or I don't know. Some of these poles are. I have one I got off of eBay for $19.99. It's a 20-foot fiberglass fishing pole.
Wow.
And the thing is, now that's something you can't necessarily bring on an airplane with you because when it's folded up, it's still 5-6 foot tall. But that thing it's 20 feet. It'll go right out to just under hair under 20 feet, and you put a really low, just a thin gauge wire on there, and hoist it up. And I've used that particularly when I've traveled either in my own car. If I knew I had a rental car with me, that's something you can throw in the trunk of the car. I live out in Utah, so there's plenty of mountains around, and if I'm driving somewhere and want to take a break, and there's a rest stop with a nice scenic view, you can pull over, throw that, extend that fishing pole with your wire on it, hook into your antenna tuner, 5 watts, you're talking all over the country.
Wow. Now, when you're operating with your 857 in a rental car, like we've talked about, you're not using a cigarette lighter, I'd imagine. How are you operating to get to full power from that rig?
Yeah, best thing to do on that is to get yourself some 12 gauge wire. I think that's the best I found. If you go heavier than that, it obviously gives you good power, but it gets bulky to carry if you're going to be on an airplane or something. So the 12 gauge wire is a good trade-off. I have about 16 foot of that, 16 foot of that with alligator clips, the big heavy-duty alligator clips on the other end. I'll just pop the hood on a rental car. I don't know what statute of limitations there are on rental cars, Cale. So I'll just say, theoretically, if you had a rental car, you may not want to try this because I don't know if it would violate your contract, your rental contract. But theoretically, you could pop the hood on a rental car and just take your alligator clips, hook that 12 gauge wire right up to the battery, run that in through the window. I'll bring it right out, real tight up against the car, come right in the passenger window, roll the window up on it so it's tight and held in place, and that's in the car with you. And so you theoretically could. I usually don't operate mobile. I'm not a big mobile operator user. So you could operate this while you're driving if you wanted to that way with a rental car, just to get the power in the car for you. But mostly I use it to be portable. So I just use the car as a battery. It's just my battery source. That way I can use a full 100 watts. But again, if you're bringing at least 16 foot or more of wire, that gives you some leeway as to where you can park the car and maybe get up nice close to a guardrail or some kind of a fence where you can use that as a ground or a counterpoise for your antenna system. So I like having at least 16 feet of wire. But you can do that with the rental car. Other things I've used, if I do want to put the antenna directly on the car, for example, if I do have that, that 16 and a half foot MFJ telescopic antenna, that's something that needs held, structurally it needs held down pretty good, because that thing can get a lot of torque on it. So you can use something like it's a Diamond K400 I have, which is just a mount. It's a car mount for an antenna, and you can bolt that right into a rental car. Again, check your contract. It may not be legal in all states. But what I've done with that too, so as I don't mess up the paint on even my own car, you can put down a piece of tape. This is one of these things that the purists are going to hate me. Anybody that operates mobile is going to say, don't do that. But this isn't a normal mobile operation. This is just something you're doing for 30 minutes or a couple hours just to have some fun. Put down a piece of tape over the paint on your trunk or wherever you're going to put this mount, and you can just put that K400 Diamond right over the tape. Just hand tighten it down with the Allen wrench bolts there. Hand tighten down. It's structurally now strong enough to hold onto the vehicle so that the antenna doesn't fall. Put on the antenna, extend the antenna, and then use a ground wire as a counterpoise rather than using the body of the car. So that way you're not scuffing up the paint or chipping the paint or damaging the car in any way. And you've got yourself, a 16.5-foot antenna, and you're in the middle of a parking lot or a field or on the top of a mountain somewhere. It's and in that case you have a rental car, so you're using 100 watts. You can talk DX with that on 20 meters. One of the limitations I found with traveling is most of the time you're in the evenings. So, because I guess it depends what you do for work, but you would usually probably find the evenings as time off. And that a lot of the times just puts you into 40 meters. With the small antennas I'm talking about, you're probably not going to be able to do anything on 80 meters or anything. So you're probably limited to 40 meters or 20 meters when it's open. And so that's a little bit of a limitation. That's why you're better to have 100 watts. But if you can catch the gray line, particularly in the summer when it stays light a long time into the evening, you can catch 20 meters on the gray line, and you can talk, again, all around the country easily on 5 watts with phone. And if you have 100 watts, you could talk DX all around the world on that gray line on 20 meters.
Wow. Let me ask you, in addition to things like duct tape and, of course, a roll of black electrical tape, maybe some bungee cords, just small stuff that we would think about before we left home. Do you ever do any digital work, or do you keep an interface with you, or is that even anything that you're interested in?
Not something I do. And
Okay.
Again, that's what I love about this hobby, because it opens up a whole other aspect, and it makes things I'm talking about even, I think, easier a lot of ways, because you don't need the same power that you would need if you're doing voice communications. So I got a phone ringing in the background, and I can't turn that one off, so you might get some noise in the background here for a minute. So yeah, I'm not into that, but that's actually what's driving me to go and learn Morse code and CW. I've always wanted to learn how to do it anyways, but I really like the fact that you can talk. It's so much more efficient from a power standpoint. You can talk and make contact so much better, with a couple watts and CW. So that's why I'm really trying to get into that. I will say, though, kind of from an obscure thing, the best tool that I've ever brought with me, and the thing I found to be most useful, is it's a vice grip that has a female 239 connector on it. Have you ever seen those?
Oh, yeah, and you can change the direction. It's got like an L bracket welded to the vice. Yeah, exactly. I've got one of those hanging on the wall over here.
Those are one of the most useful things if you're just operating portable somewhere, because you can take that, and again, literally, this is one of those things where you will make friends with security guards and police officers. But you take that vice grip and you clip it onto a fence, a guardrail, the railing around, the rooftop of a hotel that may give you access to it, or a balcony. If you have a hotel with a balcony,
mm-hmm.
You can just vice grip that thing on, and now you have a very sturdy mount that you can either just put a wire into it, you can put a telescopic antenna on it, you can put the super antenna type of manual screwdriver coil on it. It's just that's a great little, very functional base thing to operate from. And then it is a vice grip, so you can use it to torque things down, or all the things you'd use for a vice grip as well. So that's kind of like the Swiss Army knife of I would say portable business travel operating with your ham radio.
Fantastic. And it's a pair of pliers too. So if you need a pair of pliers, you got a pair of pliers.
Absolutely. It's a great thing. And those things they're obviously in the internet. I've seen them at truck stops. I think the first time I got one, I just happened to be at a truck stop and pick one up for $10 or something.
Yeah. We'll be back with John in just a couple of minutes. It's November 7, Papa Uniform Golf and Kale here on the Photime Podcast. There's no denying that Kale's a Kenwood guy. Almost every piece of gear I've got around here is Kenwood, and there's a reason why. It's great product, great manufacturing processes that lead to an experience in amateur radio that you're not going to find with a toss-away Amazon purchase. Recently, I've been using my TMV71 Alpha, which is a mobile dual-band cross-band repeat radio mounted in the van, along with my brand new Kenwood THK20 single-band handy-talkie to access our local 440 machine. And these handy-talkies, along with this TMV71A mobile radio, are working like a champ together. The build quality's there. It's not even comparable when you take a $35 handy-talkie in one hand and a Kenwood in the other. You can't compare the two. So if you're looking for some good solid gear, visit our friends at mtcradio.com. The entire line of Kenwood is there, along with their repacks. So make sure you check out mtcradio.com for all your Kenwood needs today. All right, the next round of giveaways is from Jeremy. We've got a couple Arduinos and, of course, the big grand prize Raspberry Pi 2. All right, Arduino number 1 is going to go to Preston McLean, Kilo Delta 9 Bravo X-Ray Kilo. He's a fairly brand new ham. Congratulations, these new hams. He's wanting to build an antenna analyzer. He's got a lot of coax, he says, to put up and get his shack complete. So congratulations to Preston. Number 2, Arduino number 2 goes to Alpha Lima 7 Uniform, Andrew Rosenberger. And I love this. Here's what Andrew says. For the microcontrollers, I built some type of telemetry gathering reporting system. It's kind of what I'm thinking. And it's not really clear yet, but maybe it's some sort of water ingress sensor for my basement or a freezing alarm for my garage. Now, I do know that Andrew lives in Alaska, so that's probably why he's needing to build him a freezing alarm for his garage. Of course, if you live in the Northeast, I guess it would kind of apply to you as well. So congratulations, Andrew, Alpha Lima 7 Uniform. And finally, the grand prize Raspberry Pi giveaway goes to Aaron Kuhn. Congratulations, Aaron, Kilo Charlie 3 Delta Golf Alpha. Aaron wrote in, if you had a Raspberry Pi, he'd love to try to get the BBS software Synchronet set up on it and configure Alpha X-Ray .25 access via Direwolf or some other soft modem for a packet radio BBS. And Jeremy commented here that this was his most unique application from all the Pi applications or the Pi requests for the giveaway. So congratulations to everyone. Many thanks to George and Jeremy. You can find Jeremy on YouTube/KF7IJZ. So we'll get back to the show, but just want to say again, congratulations to the winners. And thanks again to George and Jeremy for not only creating a fantastic show, but for the giveaways to follow as well. A few years back, the local club K4 India was needing a new 220 machine. And I said, hey, I've seen this ad in QST magazine. We should maybe check out bridgecomsystems.com. Well, we did. We bought a new repeater and it works flawlessly. So if you're looking to upgrade your club's 220 machine, maybe you need a handy-talkie to access your club's 220 machine, or even a base mobile, that's coming soon. And you can find out all the details at the new show sponsor, bridgecomsystems.com. Back with John, November 7, Papa Uniform Golf. I'm Cale, and you're listening to the Other Ham Radio podcast, Photime. John, right before we went to the last break, you were talking about making friends with security guards and operating here and operating there. Of course, not everybody has the personality that walks up to someone, sticks their hand out and says, hey, I'm Cale. I'm an amateur radio operator. I'd like to gain access to the roof, or I'm going to go out here in the parking lot if you don't care. A lot of us don't have that sort of attitude, I guess, towards other people. Some of us may feel entitled, or since we're licensed, we can do what we want. But there are a lot of us that try to be very, I hate to say that word, but we try to get along with folks as best we can. So When we're going to these places, how do you approach a security guard or a police officer for a park that you're not from there, you're not from around here, kind of a thing? How do you handle that situation?
Sure, and I don't push the envelope in terms of legal issues or anything like that, and never in terms of safety. So obviously, if it's not a safe place, you're not going to operate. You don't want to be having your antennas around electrical wires or anything that you're going to, get electrocuted on. But short of those kind of things, I've been really open and have been lucky, I guess, that no one's really ever cared where I operate. I go to places that are always public access, so I'm not just trying to go out on a fire escape and get up on the roof or something. There are just places that, for whatever reason, it's public access to the roof. There's a swimming pool up there. There's a tennis court. There's an observation deck, something like that. So number one, they'd let you up there. And then number two, I generally start out very clandestine and fairly obscure. Obviously, if it's a Saturday afternoon and I'm on a rooftop hotel with a swimming pool and there's all kinds of little kids out swimming and stuff, I'm not going to pull out my 16-foot antenna. But if it's Wednesday night at 9:30 and no one's there, and there's some lawn furniture and the big heavy duty furniture, cast aluminum or cast iron furniture, and umbrella, big umbrella things and all that. I mean, there's places where you can just go sit and make yourself not obvious. It's later in the evening. You start, but you pull out your little QRP rig, and maybe just use that super antenna with just a small telescopic, 3-foot-and-a-half antenna. Start with that. See if you hear anything. Check the noise level. Just check the overall operating conditions, and then take it from there. Maybe you feel more comfortable and you can drop a wire out. I've done things where if I had a balcony on my hotel, or if I was at some place again where it was safe, where I was on the edge of a building or an overpass, a bridge, something like that. I mean, you see people fishing off of bridges, or where they have walkways along bridges. There's places that you can go that can be high up where, again, the purist among us would say you can't do that. It's not going to work. Well, try it, right? You take those vice grips that have the antenna mount on them, clamp it onto the railing or whatever at the bridge or the overpass you're at. Even if you're not putting up a telescopic antenna, you can just throw an end-fed, random wire. Just drop it off the bridge and let it dangle down, and 10, 15 feet. See if you hear anything, and if you hear something, try and make a QSO. If you can get a low QSR on a piece of, if you can get a low SWR on a piece of wire, and you can hear other people talking in a ham radio band, chances are better than 50-50 that they're going to hear you. That's just been my experience. Right. And again, you're not going to break through pileups. You're not going to do any of those kind of things. But all these things are available. And getting back to what you talked about with people with that maybe are in an apartment, there are a lot of things that won't work. And you can say, well, my apartment, it faces north or it faces west or whatever, and I'm it's obstructed, and I'm not going to be able to get a good signal out with my antenna. Well, try it, and if you're only going north, well, that's okay. Again, if you have 100 watts, if you can be heading north, and it depends on what part of the country you are, but you're going to go right up over the poles. You're going to go up into Russia. You're going to make contacts in Ukraine. The great part about this hobby is it's learning how to overcome obstacles and limitations, and the magic of radio. You're just turning. You never know what's going to happen. You turn on your radio, and you may hear somebody calling CQ from Russia. You give it a shot and see if you can hear them. They don't care if you're operating with a 15-foot wire, off the balcony of your apartment.
Yeah, they're just excited to chat with you like you'll be excited to chat with them.
Absolutely. And again, the magic of radio is that you never know what's going to happen when you turn on that radio. And when you take something like this on a business trip or when you're traveling, to me, it makes it even more fun because you're dealing with different types of limitations. Okay, hey, today the hotel I'm in, it faces east, and you're in Kansas, so hey, you're probably going to be able to talk to people in New York State or something. Just work with those limitations and also use what's around you. I've looked for buildings that have metal roofs. A lot of times you'll find small stadiums or just different things that maybe have a metal roof where, again, you can maybe have access to it. And it's not like you're getting up on that. You're not going to be able to get up on that, but you can use that to reflect your signal. Some of these are very architecturally sophisticated where they have a big angle on them, or they're very decorative. Mm-hmm. Just set your antenna up in front of that, ground yourself on some kind of a beam that's attached to that building or that part of the metal roof. And again, turn on the radio, see what you hear, adjust for low noise and your SWR, and call CQ. Or usually, what I do in those situations, particularly if I'm running 5 watts, I don't call CQ. I'll try and find somebody else, and then break in and get a contact with them. I think you just improve your odds that way. You find it's like fishing. You see the fish jumping in the water. That's where you go fishing. So you tune around the dial, find some people calling CQ, or find some conversations. Jump in there, tell them your QRP. Everybody wants to talk to someone on low power because they admire the fact that you're trying to do something like that.
Right. Yeah, and you'll hear even in contests, they'll always go the QRP folks first, which is awesome and very appreciated, I'm sure, for folks who are running low power. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of people listening. You've talked about verticals a lot. You've talked about a random end-fed wire. Do you ever run any sort of dipole? What do they call the little laundry yo-yo type antennas that folks can take camping and backpacking? Have you ever anything like that, or are you more of a vertical end-fed kind of guy?
I started out with the dipoles because I thought that was just the best way to do it. But as I've done it over the years, I really have become a fan of end-fed verticals, whether they be telescopic things or just a piece of random wire. And I don't know if again, technically, I don't know. Is it the low takeoff angle that you can get good DX from? They're definitely not efficient. They're not probably as efficient as you're going to get on a dipole. But when I'm doing this portable operation, again, it's something I'm out for 30 minutes to 2 hours. I don't have time to really fool with getting an antenna way up high, probably. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I'm a big fan of the vertical or an end fed, and they have limitations, but they work. If that's what you have to use, if that's what you have, then they use that and just find ways to, again, use a good ground system, use the building you're against. I've played with, again, out here in the Rocky Mountains. Of either operating on top of mountains, obviously, is very effective. But even if you're in a valley, you can sometimes use the structure of the earth to, it's just like a pipeline. You'll set up somewhere and you'll think you're never going to make any contacts, and just the way the valley's featured, and you have this, 12,000-foot mountain that's a few miles behind you, for whatever reason, that just reflects your signal, and you'll find that maybe you have, I found Utah for some reason where I'm out here on QRP, I can generally make contacts between like Washington, Oregon. This is on 20 meters. So it would be to my northwest in Washington or Oregon, or down into Texas and Florida, which would be my southeast. And I don't know if it's, I haven't studied enough of the physics of it to know whether it's the atmospheric conditions or, all the ducting and things they talk about, or if it's just the structure of the way the mountains are here. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed, again, depends on which part of the valley you're in as to how your signal's getting reflected. But that's a really good pipeline for me out here in the Rocky Mountains.
Let me ask you, kind of going back to the very top of our conversation here, what type of coax cable do you take with you? I don't know how we missed that, but I guess it was just automatically assumed, but I'm sure people are interested to know what type of coaxial cable you take with you for operation. Oh,
good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, I don't take any. That's why we didn't mention it. Other than the only thing I have is the little 6-inch to 3-foot connector that I would use to take my radio into the antenna tuner, or something like that.
Just a jumper.
Just a jumper. I'm taking if I'm going to use that K400 diamond antenna connector as a base or something like that, or the the 902 travel antenna tuner, then I'll have some kind of a connector, and I'll use anything there from literally 6 inches to 3 feet. I guess maybe I've taken a 6-footer from time to time, but and I think that's part of the operation on this too. Remember, I'm not operating even in a car. I'm not operating mobile where I have the antenna on the outside of the car and I got to bring the wire in. I'm probably, if I've got this thing hooked up to the lid of my trunk or something, the antenna, I'm standing right there and I'm using the car as my desk. My radio's sitting up on the trunk and I'm operating. So I'm only 6 inches to 3 feet away from me and the antenna. And I think that has a lot to do with the efficiency of it all too.
Okay. Well, yeah, absolutely. If you're that close, there's no loss at all, is there?
Right. Yeah.
Fantastic. So it was kind of funny. You touched on it a few moments ago about tuning things that weren't necessarily antennas. And we've heard about I believe it's the SGC antenna match that will tune an old 50s aluminum lawn chair or even your gutters on your house, we've heard people say. And you've tried that. You've had some success with tuning things that weren't necessarily an antenna. Hit on that just for a second, because I think that deserves to be mentioned again.
Sure. And again, just using something like that little 902 travel tuner from MFJ, or using the coil from the super antenna, I found that's enough to tune just about anything I've tried to tune. And for the things that it doesn't, I just don't worry about it. So it didn't work. Well, I don't worry about that. But just again, random wires, guy wires. If you see that, if you're someplace, and again, this is something electrically, you don't want to do this if it's on a power pole or something where you're going to get electrocuted. But if there's a guy wire that's just holding something up, if there's a big architectural structure or something, or a piece of sculpture, or something coming off of a building that's a big braided wire, guy wire, I've just tapped into those. I've literally gone from my radio with that 6 inches of coax into the antenna tuner, and then from that alligator clipped right onto something like that guy wire and tuned it. And again, what I'm looking for is I'm looking to get low noise, so I don't have any man-made noise or buzzes or anything. If I don't have that, then I tune around the band and see if I can hear anybody. And at the same time, I'm using my antenna tuner and the SWR meter that's built into the radio to get a low SWR. And you'd be surprised what you can hear. And again, generally, if you can hear them, 50% of the time you can make a contact. So I've used those guy wires. I've used just any type of metal structure that's up off the ground. I've tried to tap into. I mentioned like the metal roofs. I'm trying to think what else.
We could use like a pavilion or even a backstop at a little league baseball field.
Yes, yeah. Any of that stuff. And even if it's grounded, if you have a pole, I've used, I was trying to think of the name, a light pole, just a regular old light pole, a aluminum light pole, or a flag pole. Mm-hmm. Flag poles are great. That's where you'll meet the police and the security guards too. If you're outside of a school or a park or something, there's it's in the evening and there's a flagpole there. You can and again, this is something that, maybe it doesn't work all the time, and maybe it isn't the most efficient way to do it. But if you have a little bit of time on your hands and you have your radio, give it a try and see if it works. Just wrap some wire around the base of something like a flagpole. Use an alligator clip to run that into your little antenna tuner. Go right into your rig and tune for a low SWR. Scan the band, see if you hear somebody. Try and make a QSO. You'll be surprised. And like we said, more than likely, it's a lot safer than hanging around the bar with the stale peanuts and popcorn and very expensive beer. Yep. This is the one time that the police come up to you and you're happy to show them everything you have. It's like, sir, what are you doing there? Hey, I'm a ham radio operator. You ever see this? And they come up and you can talk about it. And again, it's a lot of fun. Those guys and they'll either say, hey, maybe you don't want to be doing that, or they'll say, hey, cool. Just stay as long as you want. Clean up when you leave.
Well, we've got a friend of the show here, who likes to do what he calls guerrilla operations, and he'll take his I think it's a PRC 320 Manpack military rig, and he'll head off to the local Walmart parking lots in the evenings and toss a wire over one of the lamp poles out there and set up off the back at the tailgate of his pickup truck. And sometimes he wears his flak vest and helmet, and sometimes he doesn't. But either way, he has a lot of fun and usually draws a crowd. So won't call him out here on the program, but I've seen pictures, and it's pretty hilarious with the old Vietnam style gear in the middle of the Walmart parking lot.
I love guys that do that, and I do that kind of thing too. Maybe not that extreme, but I definitely do that. I've seen a lot of parking lots where they have, or even where I live, some of the towns have their light posts have little pegs that come off of them where they put announcements or flags for holidays or different things, and you can throw a wire up over that. I guess we didn't mention it, but you can always throw in some nylon rope or something into your kit, just enough to get you up off the ground. But you throw a rope up over that, pull your wire up on it, and again, you're in business. You can get your antenna up 20, 30 feet that way. Again, as you're going to have interaction with the metal pole and everything, sure, but just try it, see if it works. Here's my philosophy on this too. When I'm out of town, nobody knows me. My neighbors aren't around. I'm never going to see these people again. So if I look like a nerd or a geek, hey, I'm just having fun.
Yeah, and your wife's not there to tell you that you're doing it the wrong way anyway. So you're safe.
I'm not there to embarrass my kids.
Yeah,
that's the biggest thing.
John, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you. Anything before we go that you'd like to share with the listeners? Any encouragement? Again, please remind us of your web address for your podcast, Wealth Steading, and I'll let you have the last word here.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, as far as my podcast, it's called the Wealth Steading Podcast. It's in iTunes and all the normal places. If you just Google Wealth Steading Podcast, you'll find me. It's at wealthsteading.com is the website. So yeah, people like to check that out. I'd appreciate it. In terms of just as far as the hobby goes, I'd reach out just to the people that maybe are thinking about getting into it, but they haven't done it yet, or they bought the small handy talkie or things like that. They just still afraid to take those next steps. Don't worry about it. Just jump in with it. Go get yourself a small, QRP radio or even some inexpensive used equipment. Get something that does high frequency. Get your your general class or extra. Once I got my general, I initially took my technician's test and fooled around a little bit. Once I got the general, though, I was like, oh, I'm just going to get the extra. I get a little more privileges that way. Don't be afraid to do this stuff. Go out, do it. Get your general, get your extra, get on high frequency, and just go out and have fun with it. Don't let all the theory and things worry you. Throw up an antenna, tune a piece of wire, just call CQ and see who calls back. It's a lot of fun. This hobby will take you in all kinds of different directions, just from meeting people and making new friends to career opportunities. It's a great and thriving hobby, and I'm happy to be part of it. I appreciate guys like you that have podcasts that encourage the hobby.
Well, thank you, John. It's John Pugliano. We appreciate you being here with us. His call again is November 7, Papa Uniform Golf. We'll have in the show notes all that we talked about, and you can find those online at photimepodcast.com. So there you go. That's going to wrap number 44. It is the Photime Podcast. Kale here. I've been hanging out with John Pugliano. Don't forget to check out his podcast, Wealth Steading. We'll have the links all over the show notes at photimepodcast.com. Sincerely appreciate you guys listening. Thank you for the overwhelming response to the giveaways sponsored by George and Jeremy. Thanks to those two guys for providing that for you, our listener. Hope you guys remember to say thanks and encourage them to come back here and hang out with us some more. Still have a lot of cool things going to be happening over the next couple of months with the Photime Podcast, so we're excited about that. And as always, we just love hearing from you. If you like the show, we'll take a comment, we'll take a review. You can do that where you listen, or you can do it on the website. We have a comment section there. You can just click the link and it'll open right up. Of course, we always love hearing from you, especially your voice. And there's a speak pipe there. So here's what I'm trying to say. We like hearing from you. We like your comments. We like the interaction. So find us online, photimepodcast.com, any of our social media links. We like connecting with you, being a part of your amateur radio hobby. And of course, we appreciate the opportunity to share the hobby with you. We'll be back next time. Got some really cool shows coming up, by the way. Don't want to sneak anything too big, but if you've been following us on Twitter, you may have an idea. God bless you guys. We'll catch you next time. 73, y'all.
Thanks for listening, downloading, and subscribing to Photime, the other ham radio podcast, presented by mtcradio.com. To subscribe, comment, share, or review, visit our show site at photimepodcast.com. Till next time, 73, y'all.